Hey guys, I'm Rob, and this is Normal Days Off. Oh, now I just go to that one? Bloopers. Today we are making the best pasta you've never heard of. It's pasta Amatriciana with also the best ingredient you've never heard of, guanciale. So, this is actually one of my favorite classic Italian pastas to cook. There's three of them: cacio e pepe, carbonara, and the last one is pasta Amatriciana. And it actually comes from a town called Amatrice it's about central Italy. I actually need to know where that comes from. What's the name? Lazio? Lazio? I think that's actually the region that it comes from and all that. Yeah, I told you, it was in Lazio. There we go. I actually had never really seen this pasta much. You see it here and there kind of, but when I was actually living in Italy, in Siena, there was a huge earthquake, 6.2 or something like that. And it happened in the middle of the night and it just destroyed all the buildings in Amatrice. So pretty much while I was living there, every restaurant in all of Italy, everywhere you went, they were all serving pasta Amatriciana, and all of the proceeds went to rebuilding the city. So this wound up being a super favorite pasta of mine. We made it for staff meal all the time, barely any ingredients, and that's what's kind of good about it. So pretty much you can go to most like butchers or any kind of meat cures, and you can get this right here, which is called guanciale. And it's kind of similar to like pancetta, but it just has its very own like unique flavor, and it's cured heavily, just tons of black pepper. Sometimes they add a little bit of chili onto it, but besides that, it's super simple. The jowl just has like this very unique flavor. It's not like pancetta. It consists obviously mainly of guanciale, tomatoes, basil. Actually, no, not basil. You get in trouble if you put basil in there actually. So I'm gonna mess with this a bit. I know I just said you can't do that, but I'm gonna screw around with it because I'm like that. But traditionally, it's just tomato, guanciale, pecorino, and olive oil. That's it. And we're gonna be using BUCATINI, which is like the classic pasta for it to go with. This is probably for like, I don't know, like 5 people or something like that, 4 or 5 people, whatever. I can eat so much pasta, so it doesn't really matter. You can just make it for yourself. You can eat the whole thing yourself. First thing you gotta do, most guanciale that you buy, it's just gonna have some skin on it, so you're just gonna cut off the skin. But also, it just has this like texture. I don't really cut this down small. I actually kind of like it all in like, almost like dice, not dice sizes, but like a little bit of thickness to it. Get a pan on. It's really easy. You can actually get this made a little bit ahead of time. But obviously, guanciale is mostly fat, so you don't actually need a lot of olive oil to cook it in. This is all gonna render out, so you're gonna save like all that fat that's gonna be in it. So first thing you do, just like medium heat. I'm just gonna see, I left this on high heat because I'm an idiot. Oh, it seems all right. Maybe not. Uh-oh. That's pretty hot. Yeah, I screwed it up already. You know what? I'm just sending it. Take that. So, maybe I don't even need too much olive oil for this. But generally, don't cook things on high heat like me. And as long as you have this kicking on a nice low heat, it's gonna be all good no matter what. I'm gonna add some more guanciale in. Why not? I love like the texture that it gives. It almost has this like slight chewiness to it. I don't know why I'm adding more in. Usually like I put in like, I don't know, what does that look like? Like 1.5 cups or something like that? They're just like big, giant, sexy lardons. And so yeah, you just move them around a little bit because you want a little bit of color on them. You just want them nice and golden brown. Guanciale, like I said, guanciale has this very specific smell to it that pancetta just doesn't. It's just something about like the jowls. You can see it almost kind of as you do it, the fat becomes a little bit translucent. So you just kind of move them around a bit. You don't need to worry too much about it. But like I said, any good like Italian store will have this. And so while that's kind of slowly rendering out, you just kind of like slowly get all your other ingredients ready. Traditionally, you're not supposed to do this, but I really like adding garlic. I'm like a fiend for garlic. Italians though, they don't actually use too much garlic. They kind of use it the way you would use like a bay leaf in cooking or something. You don't want to like load it full. You know, in like America Town, we're always just adding so much garlic to it all the time, which is amazing. I love garlic. They don't go crazy with it at all. So you can use onions or shallots. Shallots are kind of nice because they're just like, they're so much mellower. And it makes you sound bougie when you use it as well. You know what I mean? I use shallots. Start thinking you're better than everybody else, just use onions. I think I'm better than all of you. You probably all use onions. This doesn't help that nobody talks back. I'm so used to everybody giving me shit all the time, and now it's just, now I can just shit on all of you, every last one of you. The silence is killing me. Best way to peel garlic, I just crush it with my palm. Boom. Maybe like 2 cloves of garlic, something like that. If you ever have one of those like garlic crushers, those are always handy. This is too much garlic even. When we add it in, we're just gonna throw it in, slightly brown it, just a tiny bit, and then we'll pop in everything else. You can cut these up however you want. It doesn't really matter if you're like bad at cutting onions or anything like that. You can just do it in, you don't need to dice it, get all fancy and all that. It's like whatever you're comfortable with. It's kind of the most important thing. So we'll get those off to the side. I think that was like 3 shallots, I don't really remember. So it's starting, I think it's actually starting to get where I almost need it to be. They've actually all kind of rendered down a little bit, and they're starting to get a little bit firmer. And that's kind of how you can tell when they're just about ready. And for the tomatoes, to prepare them, you can either cut them in half, or you can just crush them by hand, which is what I like doing, because I'm really lazy. It's one of those things you can just, I don't know, get your kids to crush it up for you. So there we go. These have only been like rendering out for, I don't know, maybe like 6-7 minutes. They don't take very long. Like I said, the key though is no high heat. Just don't do high heat. Chill out. Look at this bad boy. Oh, that already looks so good. That's so good. You guys want to try some? Really good. This guy? So, it's also, because it's cured, it's quite salty. So like that looks good. They're all starting to look a bit brown now. This is the only part that actually requires any kind of skill for the most part. We're gonna add a little bit of white wine to it once we add in our garlic and shallots and tomatoes. All right, so let's do it. Just like that. Put the garlic in real fast. Pretty much as soon as it fizzes up like that, add in your shallots. Oh, it smells amazing. Because you don't want them to color too much. You just want them to sweat off, let off all those aromatics. Pretty much as soon as that starts going, you can just add in your tomatoes. So these were the ones that I cut in half. I don't know why. I think I was just buying myself time. And so all these, as they cook, they'll all just start to break down slowly. Now these ones, this is what I said, you can either cut them all or you can literally just crush them by hand. They don't have to be cherry tomatoes, they can be whole tomatoes, but you just crush them up. You can use tomato sauces. I'm just a fan of using fresh tomatoes whenever I can. You don't have to be like nice about it, you know? You can just like literally tear them apart. As long as all the juice kind of comes out, then you're all sweet. Now that all these bad boys are actually in there, we can probably turn up the heat a little bit over medium and all that, because we just want to cook out the tomatoes. Like I said, they don't really, you're just cooking them out so that they lose their body a bit. Once I get these in, I don't know, maybe like a 1/4 cup of white wine. You know, there's always that gross bottle of wine hanging out by the stove. You just use that. But white wine, always use white wine. Definitely don't want to use red. But yeah, so now that's pretty much it for the time being. And you're just gonna cook these until they actually just start to lose their body. They start breaking down. It'll probably take 5 to 10 minutes or something like that. To keep a half eye on it. If you want, you can put a lid on top. Just kind of helps cook everything maybe a bit faster. you're not really looking to reduce the sauce. You're just looking to, like I said, get them to break down. You still want that like fresh tomato taste. That's why I personally, I always like using fresh tomatoes at home. You can already kind of see the sauce is starting to thicken up. Tomatoes are really good like that. So yeah, I actually, when I was living in Siena, once I finished working at a restaurant there and I moved out, I went and worked with like a master meat curer. He was kind of like outside Montalcino. It was kind of around the Valle d'Orcia, and I went there and I lived with his family for a couple weeks, and we just kind of hung out. I worked in his butcher shop. He actually, all the animals were from his own farm, so we would take them all out to the little small abattoir, and a lot of the other butchers from the area, we would all get together, and they would all help each other, like slaughter the pigs or slaughter the cows and stuff like that. It was really cool seeing like a micro abattoir. But I remember one of the first days that I went into his butcher shop, there's a big pig in the middle of the room, and I've broken down a lot of pigs. I know how to do all that kind of stuff. I was like, oh cool, this is really neat. You know, I had beautiful fat on it and all that. I went up and touched it, and it was like still warm. And I realized there was some condensation on the window up top, because they just had brought in all these warm pigs that were going into the fridge because they had just been slaughtered a few hours earlier. So it was this really crazy experience living with this guy. And one of the things that I got to do is, I mean, we made prosciutto, the real deal. We made lomo, and we made guanciale, obviously, because I think I think we did like a few pigs that day. So he had all these big curing rooms with big salt crystals all over them, and they all kind of went through different stages, and they just had guanciale and prosciutto just covered in mounds of salt. And this was like an old cellar. It was really, really cool. And one of the final things that we had to do to finish the guanciale or the prosciutto is there was this mountain called Monte Nero, like a couple hours away, and we would have to take them up there, and they would actually let the prosciutto, the lomo, and the guanciale actually get the Tuscan breeze to hit it. It was really neat. It was on top of the mountain, so they were super traditional. So I thought that was really neat. And they finished curing them inside the guy's barn, which would obviously never, ever fly here. But there would be like, in the rafters, there would be guanciale and prosciutto hanging there. And down below, there would be like animals sometimes. It was really crazy. It was really cool. It was a really neat experience. So here you can kind of see all the tomatoes are actually starting to break down a bit. I should have gotten a potato masher, actually. Oh, I know what I'm gonna do. Yes. Crush all those tomatoes up. There we go. So it's actually starting to get really thick now. So if you're ever starting to get like a little scared, if you're like, oh, okay, this is starting to get really thick, just add some of your pasta water to it. You can use like stock, I guess, if you want, but just grab a little bit of this guy. Boom. So for the most part, we're pretty much there. So I'm gonna start cooking the pasta. I think it's just about ready. So when you season pasta water, you pretty much want it salty, a little bit less salty than the sea. For like a pot that big, I just throw in something like that. That all works out. So it actually like flavors the inside of the pasta, so it actually makes it taste a lot nicer. But like, especially for a sauce like this, there's obviously so much salt going on in it already. You don't really want to push it too much. And we're going to be adding a whole bunch of cheese in at the end. Traditionally, it's made with bucatini pasta, which is pretty much, it's spaghetti, but with a little hole down the middle. And for like, I don't know, if you're doing like 4 people, it's like 400 grams of pasta or something like that anyway. You can put a little bit more, whatever you kind of like. But really, you can use it. Like, you obviously don't need to use bucatini. You could use any kind of pasta you want, even everybody's favorite villain, penne. Nobody likes penne. Smooth penne, it's gotten a bad name. But I actually really like penne. Everybody's ragging on penne so hard. I'm lucky, I got some nice bucatini. Whenever you're kind of looking for it at the shops as well, like you don't really want that like really smooth pasta. And everybody carries it now, but they'll wind up being some pasta and it looks like a little bit rougher. You can see like texture along the side of it, and that's actually what you want. through like an extruded pasta, because it actually helps the sauce kind of grab to it, and usually generally more starch will come off, and this kind of helps actually thicken your sauce naturally. I'm gonna cook the pasta. You just look at the, what does it say on here? I don't know, what does it say? It says it's all in Italian. Perfect, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. I'm gonna go, usually a hard pasta like this, I would say about 8 minutes. But like I said, it'll say on the pack. Well, that didn't work. I should have gotten the deeper bowl. But I cheaped out, just like the way I cheap out with my pasta sometimes. Whatever, you just let it hang out there. It's slowly all just gonna fall in. Never break your pasta. Never break your pasta. Alrighty. So now you can see this is super saucy now. All of them are broken down. Personally, I like the skins actually being in there. I think it just adds that, a certain amount of character to the pasta. You can tell the sauce is like, if there was too much fat in there, the sauce would kind of break and it would look really weird. You can tell the way this looks right now. Like the fat and the tomato sauce have just like emulsified really nicely. And probably, honestly, at this point, if you want to, if you're like, okay, you're a little busy, you can just turn it off, put it on a really low heat if you want, or just take it off completely until you're actually ready for the pasta. And then you can go on it. All right, so the last thing I gotta get together for this, for the most part, is pecorino cheese. Pecorino is actually a sheep's cheese. And it's very sharp. This is kind of the last ingredient that makes pasta Amatriciana. Has to be with pecorino. You can use Parmesan, but I wouldn't. It's like, because everything's so rich in this, you almost need this really sharp pasta. We're not like adding vinegar to it or that kind of acidity. What balances this out is the cheese itself. And now you can I can see with my pasta water here that it just has a bit of a different look to it now, and that's pretty much all the starch is coming out of it. And so this sauce will thicken even faster now that it has that starchy water in it. But that's like the key, like almost any good pasta across the board is using the pasta water for the sauce. It changes it, yeah, can't go back, I don't think. I can't anyway. So I'm just gonna turn it down, just on a lower heat now, because it's pretty much done. And I'm not too sure exactly how much cheese I need. I think this is probably about 200 grams or something like that. If you just get like a wedge of it and use like half of it, it's all sweet. Should I add butter to it? Piss some Italians off? Should I? Yeah. That's all piss off Italians together. They're gonna be so pissed. So it looks like we're just about ready. Now obviously you want to cook your pasta al dente. You don't want floppy pasta. You want like a little bit of a bend to it. So if like you're not too sure about the time, you actually want to undercook it a little bit, because you're going to continue to cook it in the sauce here. And once again, this is kind of like a universal rule. Any pasta, you're going to finish it in the actual sauce. So it's still like a little bit of bite to it. That's how I like it. Cool. So here we go. Y'all ready? The greatest pasta strainer in the world. You know what? I'm just going for it. 1, 2, ah! This is the worst pasta basket I think I've ever invested in. I wonder if 400 grams was enough. Let's see. Let's see. So that's about 400 grams of pasta in there. You can kind of see, this is kind of how you always got to check if pasta's ready to add the cheese into it. So you see that, the way I can draw that line across, that means I think it's just a little too thick still, which is easy enough. All you do is you just grab some more of your pasta water and it cooks out super fast. The sauce, as I drag it across, it slowly just comes back in and covers the bottom of the pot. So I'm just gonna turn this off. You never ever add the pecorino while the heat is on. all cheese. It doesn't matter if it's Pecorino, Grana Padano, Parmigiano Reggiano. It takes so long to make these, minimum 1 year to get them to just the right consistency by just throwing it on there, full boil, just cooks the shit out of that beautiful cheese. So heat off, it's okay if it's like still a little warm, this is kind of how you want it. And you just pop cheese in. Looks like a lot, but sauce almost looks a bit white, that wop. So there we go, no more heat. Just keep moving it around. So this is also very controversial, but I'm gonna add basil. I just like basil. I don't care if anybody gets angry at me. I know I'm not supposed to, but I'm gonna. And I don't know, maybe like 20 grams, like just like this much. That's it. When you're cooking this kind of stuff, it shouldn't be this like rigid recipe, you know? It's like, it should be your recipe. It's like, okay, this is how I make it. There's kind of some rules you have to follow. But for the most part, like, just if you like that much basil, put that much basil in, who cares? And that's pretty much it. Like that's it, that's all. I didn't even use all the cheese. That was like, I can probably save this for putting on top anyway. If you ever feel like it though, to make it a little shiny, I like adding a little bit of olive oil in. Sean was saying earlier that guanciale actually sounds very Chinese. But you don't want to tell Italians that. Italians fucking hate being told that any of their stuff may or may not have come from China. A little bit more pecorino on top. Boom. A little bit of basil just for color. There we go, baby. Boom. Pasta Amatriciana. Did I pronounce that right? Like I said, it's a super easy pasta. You know, it's one that you can bang together in no time, and it presses the hell out of everybody. And that's why it's pretty much one of my favorites. There's something about like simplicity like this. And there we go. Pasta Amatriciana, my favorite traditional pasta with my absolute favorite ingredient in the world, guanciale.